The purpose of life support is to help others know how to come alongside those who are hurting and suffering, and hosted by Paul Johnson, Senior Pastor of Ridgewood Church in Minnetonka, Minnesota.
Everything you do from then on is different.
One of the detectives, I think his name was
He was
Derek.
a golden boy.
All we can do right now is come together.
Extreme domestic violence, multiple rapes.
So glad you're with us on Life Support, and we are in the midst of a conversation with Jim and Mary Benson, who are telling the story of the loss of their son Eric. It's a very difficult story, and if you weren't with us last week, you can always hop on the myfaithradio.com website and listen, or know that their son Eric took his life about 1.5 years ago. And it's been a painful experience, but yet they've shared stories of faith, and it's been beautiful. So Jim and Mary, thank you so much for telling your stories. Mary, before this all happened, what was your relationship with God like, and how has it changed in the aftermath?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have been a believer for a long time, raised in a Christian family. And over the past several years, my faith has grown, and I attribute it greatly to the church that we're currently attending. And we were even baptized, a couple years ago in the Jordan River, rebaptized.
I've been there.
Yeah.
What a place, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty moving. Mm-hmm. So speaking for myself, my faith has been growing. But since Eric's passing, it has been growing leaps and bounds. Because I am having to lean harder and deeper and dig deeper into the Bible for my own survival.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, for your own survival.
Yeah, I don't know how you can get through something as traumatic as this without having faith in a loving God and knowing that He makes all things good, and in the end, all things will be made right. So,
well, that's deep faith to be able to say those words even in trauma, and it's amazing how the roots go deeper and deeper.
They do, and they continue. They continue,
which is a gift.
It is a gift.
It's a terrible way to get that gift.
It is, but it's something. I guess it's something good that's come out of something bad.
Mm-hmm. Jim, how about you? What was your faith like before, and how has it been since?
Well, I think I also been a believer for a long time. Through this, I was never angry at God. In fact, I turned it more towards me. What did I do that caused this? But I soon let that go. And now I just find myself talking to God all the time, praying and just feeling His presence all the time. And I don't know where I'd be without faith. I don't know where I'd be without Westwood. I don't know where I'd be without the people that have come into our life because of this, from a good friend of ours getting us in contact with Tony Dungy, who went through this with his son, to our pastor, Joel, who's become a really close friend, to Dave Troutman, who's become a really close friend, to all the people at Westwood. It's all part of that deepening of my faith, and it's God at work. I know it is, and we're continuing to come into situations that relate to what we went through. Other people that we've gotten in contact with who have lost a child to suicide, and we're just boldly going there because we think it's part of God's big plan that doesn't always make sense, but it's part of His plan, and we have to just trust that the story has a good ending.
You've referenced Westwood. for those of you not in the Twin Cities, Westwood Church is a large church here in the western metro of the Twin Cities, and I know that there has been a particular message that's meant a lot to you that really touched your heart and really helped you get some focus in this, right?
Yeah. Less than a month, well, about a month after Eric passed, Joel was already doing a series on pain entitled The Problem with Pain. It was a 3-part series, and on September 23rd, he did a sermon on the topic entitled Done, I Don't Want to Live Anymore. And in that, he talked about this whole thing about flooding, and he mentioned, I remember something that really stuck with me, that people that go through this don't want to end their life. They want to end the pain. And he also talked about collateral damage, that when you take your life, what that does to so many other people. And so I just would encourage people out there that have that in their mind, that they want to end it all, that I think this sermon is incredibly powerful. And also people that are going through this kind of loss, I think you can find a lot of comfort in Joel's sermon. I just think it's so powerful. So I would encourage people to go to Westwood's website, westwoodcc.org, and the series started, The Problem of Pain started September 9th, 2018, and the sermon on suicide was September 23rd. And it's all on their website, on their podcast archives, and I just think it's an amazingly powerful message.
Okay, thank you for offering that. Another resource for those of you who might be wondering too is the Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273-8255. If you're in trauma right now and you're thinking through some of the things that are being said, reach out for help. If you're in pain, don't wait. There are people that can help you. Reach out to a friend or call this number and get some help. Jim and Mary Benson are our guests here on Life Support. What we do here on this podcast and this radio show is to tell stories to help find a deeper relationship with Jesus. I hear that in both of your voices, but you still had to navigate church. You had to navigate friends. You had to navigate people who don't really understand. So, Mary, what would you say to someone who is starting on this journey that is going to navigate all of that? My wife, Wendy, calls it the million steps.
Mm-hmm. It is a million steps.
How would you say this is how you can move through socially in a church setting or with your friends?
Mm-hmm. Friends and family, they give you a lot of grace. So if you don't show up for things, or they're pretty understanding. I would go to church every Sunday, and I would just sit there and cry. The music seemed to hit me, and people would come up and hug me. And I just let it out. How to navigate this. People, and I'm really grateful for this, Eric's friends especially, they still stay in contact with us, and they continue to reach out to us, and they invite us to things, weddings, showers. They move on with their life. They're having babies, and that's all wonderful, and I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, there's this pain that their lives are going on and Eric's is not, and we're kind of in limbo, like, okay, we haven't really moved forward.
I have these pictures of my son, and I often say to myself, I want a new picture.
Yeah, that's right.
He wouldn't look like that anymore. I'm tired of that picture. Right. I love it, but I'm tired of it. And
all of his friends, we've all got a future here on this earth, and Eric's future is not here on this earth. His future is in heaven, where we'll see him. But so it's in some ways it's painful when we go to some of these things, but I'm really grateful because it's a challenge. And when we go to these things, it's kind of like we're seeing a little piece of Eric,
mm-hmm.
and that's comforting. And I keep hoping and thinking that next time it'll be a little easier. So it's a challenge.
Right.
It's a challenge, but I'm grateful that people are still reaching out.
Yeah, that is really neat, and that speaks a lot of him, that they're still in contact with you. And Jim, when you've had to work, work is not easy after this. It's not the same, is it?
No.
What's it like to have to go to the office and do your thing?
I'm not very efficient. I've never been a very organized guy to begin with, but especially initially, I just kind of wandered around from office to office and talked to people, or they came in to my office. There were a lot of really touching moments. I remember distinctly one fellow who has his own troubles came into my office, and I would say he's not a believer, or if he is, it's very weak. But he came into my office, and he was very upset and trembling, and he came over and gave me a big hug, and he said, "I just want to let you know that I've been praying for you." And I thought, whoa, that's pretty cool. So, yeah, it was hard. It's still hard. I'm still not at 100%. I'm not even close to 100%, but I'm making some progress.
Are you okay with not being 100%?
Yeah, I guess. I don't think I'll never be. I tell people this is, and I read this in a book too, and I just really hit home. This is like having an amputation.
Yeah.
And I'm amputated from who I was, and I'll never be that person again. And also, like an amputation, you get that phantom pain. So I get constant reminders every day about what isn't going to be there anymore. And that's my son, who... My son was more than my son.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
my best friend.
Yeah.
So that's...
It's a lot to try to grapple with, for sure.
Yep.
Mary, you mentioned at one point that you both grieve differently.
Mm-hmm.
So as a married couple, trying to navigate this, both in pain, both in shock, grieving differently, how's that been?
Oh, well, it's a journey, for sure. I had no idea that we would be grieving differently. And one thing that was helpful was we were put in contact with another couple early on, and they had lost their son by suicide as well. And I don't know, it was probably 15 years ago or so. And it was still, you could tell it was still affecting them. But they were the ones that told us that, you're going to grieve differently. So, that was my first clue. And the second thing that they said was that there's an increased chance that your marriage won't make it. I mean, you're at a greater risk of your marriage falling apart. And so that's more bad news.
Yeah, that's a sobering reality,
It's
really.
a sobering reality, yeah. So, so we were put in touch with them, and we were in a group with Grief Share, and that kind of told us things to expect too. And we were in therapy for a while, and that that helped us navigate as well. But I think just knowing that Jim and I grieve differently. He has a hard time getting out of bed in the morning. I get out of bed. I wake up early when it's still dark out, and I'm out of bed. I can jump out of bed, and I can, I can function. But I jump out of bed and I go right to the Word, and that's what I look forward to. So I think just being aware that we grieve differently, and that to allow your spouse his space to grieve, and he gives me my space to grieve, and I can tell when he's struggling, and he can look at me, and he can tell by looking at me that I'm having a hard time, and just knowing that, That's
really important to know, because I think that we are expecting our spouse to behave like us, think like us at times.
Yeah.
And processing grief for everyone is so completely different. And, some people seem to just sail through something like this, and then it hits them 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And some people are crushed at the beginning, and then they sort of get up and get going. So everybody's different. And I think as believers who are navigating church and navigating our small groups and so forth, we need to understand that if someone's sharing something that happened 20 years ago, it's very easy for us to say, well, come on now.
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I found myself in a homicide support group, which I never thought I'd say those words. And there were people that had lost children 25 years ago just weeping.
Yeah.
And they're not weak. They're just hurting.
Yeah.
Because it's real and it doesn't go away. It's like you said, Jim, it's amputation. That's not something that you get over.
No. You get
and
through.
I think you get through it. And I think if believers in churches could get a handle on that, there would be a lot less people that are afraid to enter back in because they'll be loved for where they are and they don't have to pretend that they're at a different place.
I think, if I could interject something here, I think that in lots of ways, the second year is harder. The first year and the first few months, as Dave Troutman told us, you got the Novocaine going. But as time goes on, the Novocaine fades. And as time goes on, people move on, which they should do because that's natural. Granted, then we stay in contact with Eric's buddies and stuff, but they're moving on. And your spouse and yourself, you grieve differently. And so you come to a point where now you're really on this journey alone. It's you and God. And so I think in lots of ways, the loneliness of year two is harder. It's just you're out there alone. You've got God, but you're alone.
That's right. And only you really understand your pain. And there's something inside of me that reminds me that this is kind of the way God wants it, in the sense that I have no place to go. I think often of when Jesus was asking the disciples, who am I? And, of course, Peter was the first to speak and never really knew not to speak. But he looked at Jesus and, Jesus reminding him it was going to be hard to be a disciple. Are you going to stay with me? And Peter said, well, where else am I going to go? And I think God wants to put us in a position that we're never going to go anywhere else. Because here's the bottom line to all this, is that whether we are in trauma or not, God is really all we have.
Yeah.
But we can be fooled into thinking that all of this stuff, including our spouses, including our church, are somehow going to satisfy us or be the answer. And when God drags us into something like this, then you realize really quickly that it's either going to be I'm going to follow Jesus at a new level, or I'm not. Because there's no middle ground, right, Mary? I mean,
No, there is
you
not.
can't be a sort of Christian in the midst of this stuff.
Yeah, this is heavy duty.
Yeah, heavy duty.
Yes.
Good way to put it. But we can be thankful for heavy duty, because then we get to know Christ at a brand new level.
Yeah, and there are blessings in that.
Well, I think it causes you, too, to be a lot more sensitive to the pain that's out there.
Yeah,
I think when things are going well, you're just going about your life. And now when I walk through the Skyway downtown, I keep thinking, everybody I'm meeting has got something that they're dealing with. And, I think there's a tendency to, when this happens, to think, why us? And then I think, why not us? Everybody has their stuff. And there's a lot of people going through things that I can't imagine going through. I have a dear friend from high school who lost her son-in-law in a tragic car accident, and so she's grieving that, but she's also trying to support her daughter, long distance, who suddenly lost her husband. And I think, how do you navigate that? So there's just all kinds of pain out there, and I think this increases your senses, you're much more sensitive to the pain that is out there in the world.
In the few minutes that we have left here, I'll begin with you, Mary. Let's talk to people right now that are considering taking their life, okay?
Yeah.
Because we know that this show airs here in the Twin Cities at 8:30 on a Saturday night. It's going to be listened to at different hours and in various stages of life. And people, when they're alone, they're going to be in darkness. How would you counsel someone, not necessarily at this moment, but somebody who's been kind of ruminating about this and thinking about this? What would you say to them?
I would say speak out. Let somebody know that you're having these thoughts. If you're struggling and thinking about taking your life, let someone know, because more people love and care about you and want to help you. Yeah, and you're not. I don't believe you're going to always feel this way. I don't think you're always going to be feeling pain. That eventually, with some help, things will look different. You'll come out of the darkness. I would just beg for you not to go that route. Mm-hmm. Not to go that route.
Mm-hmm. Jim, what would you say?
I'd echo what Mary is saying, and that if somehow they could realize, like I said before, their core value is with God. It's not with the world. It's not with what people think or say about them. And also that taking their life, what that does to the people left behind, the collateral damage, is so horrendous. And if they somehow can feel that and get through that temporary flooding, that there's peace and light at the other side.
So one more question. What would you say to parents that are grappling with this very issue? Maybe it's been a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
That have a child that took their life?
Yep.
Oh, my. I mean, everybody's journey is different, but for me, I would say, also reach out. Reach out if you're struggling. And for me, and I can only speak for myself on this, is that faith is definitely a godsend. Because for me, it is making bearable the unbearable.
Yeah. Yeah, faith is massive. And Jim, would you echo those same thoughts?
Yeah, lean into your faith, and hopefully you have a support system that you can lean into. But bottom line, it's going to be you and God, and it's going to be you and God for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And as believers, the things that people say sometimes aren't helpful, but there is a bottom line knowledge to know that there is a future hope. And we will see our loved ones again. And it doesn't take away the pain, doesn't even lessen the pain, but it does help us orient ourselves to something more that's in the future. And of course, beyond that, there's Christ waiting for us as well. So as believers, we have an incredible hope.
Yeah, we sure do. We do. And, I know that life on this planet is just minuscule. It's just a blip. And I will see Eric again. I realize that the prize is seeing Christ. But seeing my son again is a bonus.
It's a huge thing.
It's a bonus.
It's really important. I thank you both for spending time with us. I know this is a difficult topic, but I also know that God is going to bless this, and he's going to use you in mighty ways. You have no idea. And I want to thank you for your courage and honesty in being with us today. That's Jim and Mary Benson telling a very difficult story. Afflictions and trouble are a part of everyday life in a fallen world, and sin has wrought death and destruction. But please know that Jesus has defeated death on the cross, and he comforts those who suffer. In Isaiah 43:2, we read, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze." God is with you. He will not forsake you. And so take heart. Don't give up. Be encouraged that God is watching over your circumstances right now. One more time, that National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. On Life Support, we tell stories to help you find a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ through trauma. I want to thank you for spending time with us today, and we want to thank our special partners, Faith Radio, Five Stone Media, and here at Ridgewood Church, we would love to help you if you want to reach out at myrwc.org/life support. If you'd like to watch a video version of this show, you can hop on Five Stone Media's website. That's fivestonemedia.com. And I would love to have you follow me on Twitter at Pastor Paul J. So I hope you've been encouraged and hope this has been helpful. And we'll see you next time on Life Support.